This is Conversations with Ronnie Keith. Thank you once again for joining Conversations with Ronnie Keith. I am your host, Ronnie Keith. I want to thank you guys so much for continuing to support, download. Um, Please tell a friend, continue to tell friends to subscribe, follow, download. Also, you can catch me on my other show on Tuesdays, the Short Desk Podcast, with my co hosts, John, Steph, and Dwayne. Continue to download that show as well. We're available on all streaming platforms. And I just am overwhelmed by the support, the love, the feedback, the ratings and reviews that you guys have been leaving me on the apps. If you do follow uh, me on Apple Podcast, please rate and review if you can. If you follow me on Spotify, you can rate. I don't think the other apps give you that opportunity to rate and review, but that's okay. If you're listening to me on Amazon, YouTube, iHeart, it don't matter. Just subscribe and follow, so those downloads come automatically. As you guys know, the purpose of this podcast is to sit down with extraordinary people from all walks of life, and today is no exception. I have a very special guest, an extraordinary person that I will be interviewing with today, and that is the mayor of a city called Cheverly in Maryland. This is a predominantly African American city, and she is the first African American woman mayor of this city. And her name is Kayce Munyeneh. Kayce, how are you
That
doing
was
today?
excellent.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Welcome to Conversations with Ronnie Keith. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. So, Mayor Casey, let's just go ahead and jump into it. You are the mayor of a city, a town that, well, as I looked it up at that time, I don't know if population has changed, but it was just under 7,000 residents. That was founded in 1918
hmm
and has been predominantly African American. How in the world did you come to become the first in a predominantly black town, become the first black mayor of this city? How did that happen?
Oh my, that's a long story. I'll try to make it short as possible. It is now predominantly African American. It was not always that way. As a matter of fact, for the tract houses where I live, most of the homes were built in 1948 to 1955. The fifth restrictive covenant on your deed was that no person of color could live in the home. They can
Wow.
only work in the home. So I actually have one of those.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So at one point, this was a plantation. And interestingly enough, that was our town seal for a very long time. And I didn't know that was a plantation on there.
Oh, my goodness.
And then, after a plantation, it progressed into being a regular middle class suburb that was all white, but for all intents and purposes was a sundown town. Your
Mm.
servant, your help had to leave town by 5 or 6 o'clock. And then we were kind of known as we progressed and moved through history as the town where you don't want to drive through because there was significant policing. Um,
Mhm.
I'm not originally from here, and there is not one African American male that I've found ages 28 to 70 that has not been pulled over by a Cheverly police officer.
My goodness.
If they came through town, they were pulled over. So there's long history of not necessarily being the most welcoming place for people of color. And then when I bought my house, I bought my house from, interestingly enough, the president of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. And I had no idea. She was 92 and in a convalescent home, but her
Mhm.
daughter in law was a real estate agent and married to someone who grew up in the town. So it's very close knit town, very family oriented. So the way they tell this story is that Cheverly um, desegregated overnight, and there were no problems.
Mhm.
And so I thought, wow, that's a beautiful story. And then the longer you live here, the more of the real story comes out, where you learn that the first family that moved from what is called where I live, Black Cheverly, Old Fourth Ward, to Cheverly proper, um, had significant problems. Their children were not allowed to live with them because they were afraid for their safety.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah. So there's a rich history of it not being a black town. And then, of course, we know with like, this is a age old story for most of America. Black people were able to move in the old Fourth Ward. There was a home that they could afford.
Mhm.
Might be somebody from the military where they're now able to use a grant to purchase a home, but they started to slowly move in on one side of town, which is geographically separated by a bridge. So
Mhm.
folks kind of let that happen, right? Like, oh, they can go be over there. But
Mhm.
for the white people that lived over here, there was white flight. They left, um,
Wow.
which opened up, housing for more black people. So they continued
Mhm.
to move in. And one of the things that I think is amazing about this area, the reason why I wanted to move here as a kid was it was to me the mecca for black success, wealth, and intellect. Because this place is right outside of DC. It is the first
Okay.
suburb outside of DC.
Oh wow. Okay.
And
Okay.
so, because there's a huge middle class to upper middle class section of people who are people of color, because of the federal government put jobs and contracts that are here, you had what I call the Brown Norman Rockwell. You had well to do African Americans raising their families in a very unique way that's unlike most of what I think America saw. So if you talk with people who are in their 70s that grew up here, they will tell you that they had the most amazing childhoods. They
Mhm.
spent their times, skiing through the streets because there's lots of hills in Cheverly. So once they freeze over, you can
Mhm.
kind of go up and down the slopes that way. And they just had a really wonderful time. The black people kind of stayed to themselves. Um, but then over time, we get past the 80s and the 90s, and our last census says that some of our numbers have gone down because of COVID. So
Mhm.
we were at 7,000. I think we're right at 6,200 people. And of that 6,200 people, um, we used to have 62% African American. Now we have 59%. So we are
Mhm.
a majority minority community, but I don't even like to use that terminology anymore. We're black.
Okay.
We're black
Oh,
community.
there
Yeah.
you go. I love that.
Um,
I love that. Wow.
yeah.
So I did not know that Cheverly would be is the first town outside of DC, and so having said that, I know that you know you weren't you didn't have any interest in politics,
Mm-mm.
and before becoming getting involved in politics, and so I see that at one point you had your start there. Well, not your start, but shall I say you were involved in government in DC, and so you were a victim advocate for the DC Superior Court. How did that work out for you? And then we could start with your transition into actual politics.
Sure. I'll take a step back to undergrad. As a kid, I wanted to be Benjamin Matlock. I knew I
Hmm.
wanted to be an attorney. When
Wow.
I went to elementary school, I had a briefcase and a three-piece suit.
Hmm.
Kids picked at me. I was ridiculous. So as I went to undergrad, I had always heard that you take political science, and then you go to law school. That's how you do it.
Right.
Now, I had no guidance through college whatsoever. I had a very dysfunctional family that I came from, so I had to figure it out on my own.
Hmm.
So the things that normal people learn, like if it's a 400 level class, that's probably for a senior. I didn't know that. So I was like, "Ooh, this looks interesting." My little nerdy self, I would take it for freshman year. Like
Hmm.
there's no prerequisite. I loved it.
Right.
And I loved learning. So I had like 18, 24-hour semesters.
Wow. Wow.
I was like, "Oh, I like this class."
That's a
Um,
lot of learning.
yeah. And balancing working a job from 5 to 9 a.m. until my classes start,
Mm,
working from 4 to 6 after my classes were done,
mm.
and then working at nighttime. I had 3 jobs while I was in undergrad.
Oh my goodness.
But during that time, nobody ever said to me, "Hey, Casey, You are inappropriate. You probably should not be in political science. Like, if you think about going into politics, it's not for you. Nobody said that to me.
Hmm.
So I'm going along the whole path thinking I could either, be an attorney or be a politician. I get all the way to my senior year. And Dr. Sharkey says, Kayce, you are painfully honest. I don't know how well you're going to be able to do in this political career.
Mm.
And I'm like, you waited till my senior year to tell me this? So I get up to DC with this thought that there's no way possible I could be in politics. Keep in mind the way I view politics is that government is to be to a group of people what they can't be to themselves.
Hmm.
So they should fix a problem that is so large that one individual person can't fix it. That's how I view it.
Right.
So I came here and I came here really to get away from home. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I had 1 month's rent from my graduation money. I went to
Mm-hmm.
Randstad Staffing Company, and they had me be a receptionist at the American Psychological Association behind Union Station. I am not a very good receptionist. So I had to plan. They wanted me to plan these little lunches, and I'm like, I was not interested. And I'd
Hmm.
applied to be a victim advocate, and I'm very transparent because it paid a ton of money for that time. For that time, it was $35,000, and
Hmm.
I was 19 years old.
Oh yeah,
So I was like,
raking the bread at 19 years old.
yeah, I was like, let me see if they're crazy enough to hire me. But I never wanted to have anything to do with victim advocacy because of how I grew up. I grew up in a very dysfunctional, abusive household. But I was like, for this $35,000, I can handle it.
Hmm.
Um, and then I got to DC Superior Court, and I fell in love with being a victim advocate. I really felt like I had an impact on people's lives. My clients were honest with me. I work with the most indigent people in DC, so they were crack addicted.
Mm.
Um, I remember some of my clients had like two T cells back in the day when you couldn't get treatment if you had AIDS. Um,
Wow.
and they were all just severely abused people looking for a way to be safe, which was no different than me, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
um, it was really, really a wonderful experience. And I left DC Superior Court and went to the Metropolitan Police Department and worked there for 15 years doing the same work.
Wow. Now, being a victim advocate, what does that entail? I know that
Mhm.
you advocate for, victims and people on the lower end there, but what does that really, what do you really do for these victims? And how, because when I hear that, I think of a social worker, but I'm sure that's very different. So how does that work?
Well, there are a lot of social workers that take that job. It is a terrible title for what we do. So, what I say is my job is to help you put your life back together after somebody's destroyed it. Now,
Mm.
somebody may have destroyed it because they stabbed you, shot you, killed your loved one, raped you, but whatever you need for us to help you put your life back together. Um, and you get to determine what that is. So, if somebody has been sexually assaulted and they are not interested in getting a rape kit right now, they're hungry, then my
Hmm.
job is to find you food, and advocate that you have access to food first, because most people know exactly what they need in the moment that they need it.
Hmm.
Um, but that consists of finding every resource you can imagine: literacy programs, drug programs, housing. Housing is the number one reason for domestic violence, especially in this area. People will stay with folks because they don't want to be homeless, and they'll
Mm.
endure torture because they don't want to not have some place to live, or they don't want their children to have not have somewhere to live. So, and with the housing prices here, there are a lot of people who are staying places they probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, we connect them with all those resources, and once a case is open, it's never closed. So it is very similar to social work. Like if you need me 2 years from now, I'm still working there. I'm still going to help you.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. So you moved over to work with the Metropolitan Police Department, and you were stunned by the lack of leadership after you attended a workforce development class. So did that kickstart the interest into jumping into being a leader in politics, or did that happen a little bit further down the road?
Now I have to ask you, because ever since I had my child, my memory has been destroyed. Where did you learn that? Did I tell you?
You surely did not. I did my research.
Look at you. Oh my goodness. This is a bona fide real podcast, folks. Like he's done some
Yes.
homework.
Yes.
Oh my.
I
That's
do
interesting.
I
That's
do my
digging.
homework. Yes.
Because I remember I put that on an application for like a leadership program because I
Okay.
went to workforce development and I'm always asking questions. I'm a permanent interviewer myself.
Hmm.
And I asked this question because my supervisor was god
Mm.
awful, just a terrible human being. I will,
Wow.
and I will always say I'm so thankful for her because if it was not for her being terrible, I would not have left.
Hmm.
And so sometimes God uses discomfort to move us.
Yes.
And he
Yes, he
knew
does.
I had a very cushy, great. I didn't know anything about GS levels when I went to the government. So as a 19-year-old, I'm leaving DC Superior Court, 20 years old. I start making $50,000, which I was just balling in my mind. But
Right.
I'm a GS 12 at 20 years old.
Hmm.
And I don't know how big a deal that is, right? Like there are folks that are on my floor who are in their 50s and 60s and they're GS sixes.
Mm.
So my propensity to earn was way higher than most people. So I'm just not appreciating where I am in life.
Right.
But my supervisor probably had felt some intimidation, even though I am not intimidating. People can be intimidated by me.
Hmm.
Um, but she was just terrible. And she
Hmm.
didn't care about the victims. And I really did because I knew what they had gone through.
Hmm.
So I went to workforce development to figure out how can I better myself? What can I do? And I asked these people, have any of you all, granted, this is not scientific data, this is anecdotal, but I'm like, have any of you all actually had a good supervisor, a good mentor, a good leader?
Hmm.
And I was in a classroom, I think of like 40 people. It was a large workforce development class. Not one person. Now, this is DC government, which has all sorts of stereotypes about it.
Right.
But at least one person should have said, no, I've had somebody really show me the ropes, or I've had great mentorship and leadership, or my supervisor told me to take this class or something. When I saw that, I was like, I wonder if there are any leadership programs where you can actually do this well as soon as you start. Because a lot of times people will get a job because their friend got them one. And
Exactly.
I actually am not opposed to nepotism or cronyism. I know that sounds terrible, but
Hmm.
sometimes you people hire their friends. Fine.
Right.
Do not embarrass your friend.
Right.
Right? Like if they got you a
Right.
job, do your job well
That's right.
and go figure out how to be the best at that position.
Right.
So my thought was if you're getting a job because you got the hookup, okay, there has to be something that teaches you how to lead where you're not ruining people's lives in this position. So I started looking for leadership programs. Um, and that's how I ended up at Georgetown. Now I learned, and then my master's is in leadership and organizational development.
Hmm.
Now I learned while I was there, the people that really need that class don't ever go there.
Of course. Of course.
But at least I could learn how to be a better leader and get tools. So that's how I ended up there. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then I will say that that application of that information had an impact on whether or not I would lead later as a politician for sure. The mayor before me, who shall not be named,
Mm.
there were some significant challenges between that person and the staff to the point where we had staff asking to resign. Um,
Wow.
so definitely there was lots of repairs that had to be made because of leadership before me. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So we fast forward and
Mhm.
you 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 had become there was a town council that you served
Mhm.
on in Cheverly. And what does that entail being on a town council? Is that like, is that city council pretty much, right? You're a council person? Is that what it
Yes, so
was?
you're responsible for your ward, and
Okay.
I was Ward 4. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you did that for 3 terms. Did during that time were you having talks with politicians in the city, and as you said there was some issues going on with the previous mayor that hey, Kayce, let's push you here. I think that you would be great in this, leading this town. Did that happen, or was it just like, what? I want to make a difference. How did that happen for you to become mayor here? Because you didn't want
Uh,
to do it. Now you didn't want to do politics. You didn't, even at being on the town council, you just didn't want to do it, but you did it anyways.
yeah, that's a reoccurring theme. I continue to not want to do it. um, there were people here and there who were like, "Have you thought about going further in your career?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not."
Mm,
Because the strife that the staff experienced, the council members did as well.
mhm,
I would argue that that person's leadership style just was not resonating with everyone. And
mhm,
so I got to a point, I will never forget this. This is the Friday before I was sworn in as mayor. I said to our town administrator, I think I'm going to quit.
oh wow.
Um, I love doing the work of a council member, but our meetings were 6 hours long. I felt like I was being held hostage. And I repeatedly said, I cannot take time away from my son unless I'm
Mhm,
able to show him what I did with my time.
mhm,
I have to be able to say, this is what mommy was doing.
mhm,
Otherwise, I need to be with him.
mhm,
And so we were having accomplishments, but they were small and few and far between. So I said, I think I'm going to step down. And I didn't want to do that because the council member before me had stepped down. And I thought that
oh
would
wow.
leave a bad image of town leadership. We had gone
Right.
through a lot. We had our chief of police, our town administrator, and our mayor all resigned or stepped down within a month of each other. So there was a little bit of a scandal going on too. And
Oh my God.
I didn't want to bring any more scandal to town government. Because as I mentioned, we're a very respectable community. So everyone was
Mhm,
just aghast that this was
mhm.
happening. So
Right, right, right.
um, that Friday, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to deal with that person anymore. I'm going to step down. That Sunday, I turned to my then husband and said, you know what? We can go be house poor in Montgomery County, which is a different county,
Mhm,
which has way more expensive homes that look exactly like ours. Um, I was like, we could just move there and not deal with this any longer. So I said that Sunday.
mhm,
And then for some reason, I talked to my town administrator that Sunday, which is odd. And he was like, I think something's going to come up soon. There was just a feeling in the air. And I said, once I found out there had never been a black mayor, I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm going to run for mayor one day. Um, and so I knew in the back of my mind, I definitely wanted to think about running for mayor, but by then I was done with my political career. And so he mentioned something, and I said, I do not want to be mayor unless God wants me to be mayor. That's
mhm,
Sunday. That Monday morning at 9:18, my town administrator calls me and says, are you sitting down? Because I served as a council member, but I was also the vice mayor. And by way of charter, the vice mayor becomes the mayor if something happens to the mayor, and the mayor resigned.
mhm.
So that is how I initially became the mayor. She resigned, and I immediately filled the position.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um, and then we worked through the rest of her term, which was a year. For me, it was a very humbling experience because I didn't feel legitimate unless somebody voted for me.
Right.
Um, and so we had elections, and plenty of people voted for me. So that made me feel good.
Okay. Okay. Did you run? Did you had opposition from within your same party, and or did you have to just run against the opposite party for
So these
that?
are nonpartisan positions.
Okay.
Because remember, the mayor is the representative of everybody in town, so that could be any party.
Okay.
I would say that, to be honest, I was technically uncontested,
Hmm.
but they had write-in candidates that they definitely wrote in. So I ran against 32 people and cats because some people wrote in cats.
Okay. Okay. All right. And so you won, obviously.
Yes.
So God gave you the sign that, hey, you need to be mayor of this town, and you answered the call. Being in office, I know that it comes with its challenges and its triumphs. For a person that did not initially want to be involved in politics, how has things turned around for you with you staying in your seat, not leaving, and initially being a person that, a woman that did not want to be involved in politics at all? How have things turned for you with being in this seat here?
Well, people ask me, how do you like being the mayor? And I say, I love every second of it. I really
Wow.
do. Um, and I say 95% of the time, I really love what I do,
Hmm.
because it is a weird extension of me being able to have a family.
Hmm.
Um, so if you don't have heat in your house, in my mind, it's a weird thing. Everybody's my grandbaby. So
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
it's my job. It's incumbent upon me to figure out what do we do for my residents, because they can't be in their house with no heat if it's 20 degrees outside.
Hmm.
And I love solving complex problems. I like fixing things and then kind of moving on. And so we had a lot of problems we needed to fix, especially with like infrastructure and stormwater management. Um, and I tell my staff all the time, you guys do not know how unique this is. We are a high functioning, high performing team. And that does not always happen. When I say like we have staff where they're like, what does the mayor need? And they're so supportive.
Wow.
I could almost cry. Like that's truly how you know when God has set you up for something. He
Hmm.
makes the way easy.
Hmm.
And it sounds weird for me to say it is easy to be the mayor.
Hmm.
Um, it is. It definitely is now. Now I will say the first part of my term, I had to deal with some heartbreak because I never felt like we were post-colonial. But remember, I lived on an all-black street with successful black people. It never even occurred to me it was all black.
Right.
So I never thought about racism here, which is
Hmm.
really ridiculous, but I didn't. And I'm from South Carolina, where my racism is bold and Confederate flagish. So I like
Yes.
that.
Right in your face.
Yeah, I like that. I know where I'm not welcome.
Right. Right.
And here, people will have a Black Lives Matter sign in their yard and have
Hmm.
no idea that their behavior is very supportive of white supremacy.
Mm.
So I had to deal with some of that and be willing to be bold and educate people. Do you understand that what you just said was racist? And here's why,
Hmm.
which some people did not like.
Right. They weren't receptive of that at all, I'm
Mhm.
sure.
The most important thing that I learned was when you're raised to be a Black Southern Belle,
Hmm.
you want everybody to like you. You want to be nice. Being nice is the biggest compliment in the world. And when I realized the people that were criticizing me were five in number, they were just really loud. I was like, ah, forget them. And
Hmm.
then, like my mentor in politics, her favorite word is mother, and so I learned to use that word religiously. It does help you.
Hmm.
And so we chart this path, and I still am enjoying every minute of it.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So how long is a term there in Cheverly, Maryland for mayor?
3 years.
Okay. What year are you in now?
This is my second year of my second term, so I'm up next year, 2025 in May.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. So does I want to take it back a little bit. You said that you had pretty much a traumatized childhood. Did that drive you to be the success story that you are now?
Well, I don't think I'm a success story. That's the start.
Oh, come on. You got to be kidding me. Are you
I don't
kidding me?
say that because of humility. I feel like I'm just getting started with what I need to be doing, and I
Mhm.
feel like I was sort of delayed because of that background. I feel like there's so much more for me to try to accomplish, and I've had some, some pitfalls along the way. I had the bad childhood, and then I had a bad marriage. So
Mm,
I continue to try to recover from bad decisions. But what my childhood did for me was try to speed up life so I could get out of that house. That was the most important thing to me.
okay.
Um, and it has shaped the painful honesty that I provide. My mother suffers from mental health issues, and part of that includes being a pathological liar. So
Mm,
there are times where I've had people who are close to me where they're like, "Casey, you don't always have to tell us the truth. Like we don't even want to know the truth. Like
mm,
if but it's really important for me to tell the truth because I need to make sure I'm never like her."
right.
So it
Right.
definitely has had an impact for sure.
Okay. Okay. Um, I know that you remain humble, but this is nothing small to speak of being, put in a position that you have been all throughout your life, making these changes, being a part of these different organizations, and now being a mayor of a town. Um, that's no small feat, and you're still young and there's still a lot of life ahead of you and a lot of things that you can accomplish. But I look at you as a complete success story because things could have turned totally different for you. You know what I mean? You could have
Oh
went
yeah.
down a bad path, or I won't say a bad path, but you could have went down a path of where you let some of the shortcomings, as you stated before, some of the pitfalls that you face as far as growing up in the home that you did, and even a divorce, kind of deter you from continuing on the path that you have gone and is on right now. And so I look at you as a complete success story and someone that your child will look at and say, wow, my mommy is doing great things in spite of, all these other things that have happened. And so I think that you are a complete success story,
Well, I
and
do
still
say
growing.
to I appreciate that. I do say to people, part of my testimony is I should have been, on drugs and a prostitute for sure.
Okay.
And if people ever doubt that, as painful as it is to acknowledge, my oldest brother was murdered. My brother after
Mm,
him is an alcoholic, and the brother after him suffers from severe mental illness. So, like in terms of
oh wow.
survival, um, and who is a fully functioning, most effective citizen, I definitely have survival guilt in that way. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I could have been a great many of terrible things for sure,
Yeah.
but for the grace of God. Um, and I would say this: God makes sure to keep me humble because that's partly why I say that. When you get put in a position because somebody steps down after you've just said, I don't want to be in it unless God puts me in it,
Mm.
it's almost like God smirking at you.
Right.
And then I had to take a moment where I had to really repent because I always had a high IQ. I tested into Mensa. So I always felt like my accomplishments were mine, and I had to ask God for forgiveness. Like there's nothing I accomplished that's mine accomplished. It's His.
Hmm.
And so He was showing me I do everything, even putting you in this spot. Like I do that.
Hmm.
I just need a willing vessel, right? And so the
Amen.
most I can say is I'm willing to do whatever He tells me to do.
Amen. Amen. God had to show you who he is.
Yes, yes, He did. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Um, so one last question I have for you. I know that earlier on you said there was the issue of policing where people would pass through the town as being mayor, and being pulled over, um, black people in particular. Has that still been a issue to this day with you as the mayor that you've had to address, or has that kind of gone away, that type of issue that people dealt with back then?
I won't know. I can't say it's completely gone away, but I can tell you there's no problem I see that I'm not going to try to touch and fix it.
Okay.
We have a completely different police department. And when I say completely different, every staff member is different. I
Oh
have a
wow.
new chief, I have all new officers. And my officers are amazing. They really are. We've had some really bad apples over the course of time. The folks that we have now, these are officers. Keep in mind, I have a small police department. The maximum amount of officers is 20 people.
Hmm.
Um, but because of that police department, Cheverly is one of the safest places in Prince George's County, which has been known to have high crime at times.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so our we during the pandemic, we were down to 4 officers,
Oh wow. Wow.
and they still were coming to work every day and making sure we were safe. So the police department that I have now, I think is phenomenal. And if they pulled you over, it's definitely because you were doing something. Because they pulled me over,
Okay.
and they
Wow.
know my car, and they will still pull me over. Yes,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
I feel confident in saying nobody's being pulled over in town just because they're black. I do feel confident with that.
Okay. Well, that's a blessing. That is a blessing. Um, so Casey, there are plenty of young black girls that look up and see, wow, if she can do it and she's doing it, I can do it. What type of advice would you have for any young black women or little girls that may be aspiring to follow your path into politics?
You know, one, no one's going to be able to tell you what this path is like. So you can listen to all the advice you want, but make sure that you have some level of faith. I don't care what it's in. If it's not God, if you want to call him universe, whatever you want to call him,
Hmm.
make sure you have something to center you, because there are tough days. I don't want to make light of the fact that there are some days where I do not want to do this for sure.
Right.
So make sure you've got that. You have to create your own support system too. I like to say I really feel connected to Jesus because my friend group is a bunch of misfits. I have some folks from the LGBTQ community on a certain street. If you say anything about me, they will fight you for me. Um, my friend group, my core group is not who you might think it
Mhm,
should be, right? That
mhm,
includes people from upstate New York who used to be in jail. I just have really weird friends
mhm,
they are ride or die for me, and I appreciate it. Um, so make sure you have a good support system. You need it. There's people where I've had a girlfriend I had to call to go get my kid from school
mhm.
because I'm a single mom doing this.
Right.
And it doesn't make it any easier. So definitely that. But I'll tell you this little anecdote, and that hopefully will help any little black girl or any black woman that thinks about doing this. Before we were a high performing functioning team, I love the tools that I got from Georgetown. So I was like, we need to do a disc assessment, and I need a Myers Briggs. Who's in the room with me,
Mhm,
and who are their personalities, and how can I work best with them? And
mhm,
the one person that I could not get along with the most was a white male, and we did our personality assessments, and we have the exact same personality.
mm.
And I said to that council member, I said, "Don't you get it? That's the problem. Basically, on paper, I'm a white man." And so no wonder you have such a hard time with me, because I have no business acting the way that I act,
Mhm,
according to you in your mind and how you expect a black woman to act. And that's when I realized I don't ever think about being black. That's
mm.
terrible. I
Wow.
never think about being a woman. I just do my work.
Mhm,
And then I realized the only time I ever think about it is when somebody's trying to use it to make me feel less than.
mm,
um, and that I refuse to allow. So just know you first of all, if you're a black woman, you are magical, and I don't say that to be tongue in cheek. We some bad people. We are.
mhm,
We are
mhm,
remarkable people, and we've overcome so much. There's nothing we can't overcome. So having that knowledge means there's nothing you can't do.
mm. Wow. That's wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you for that. And I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to this would like that. That was something to be said. You never think of yourself as a black woman in your mind until someone uses it as a weapon against you. And
Mhm.
that's sad that it does get used as a weapon in this day and age. But man, all right. Well, I know that you're in your, you said second term
Mhm, mhm.
as mayor, and you're coming up on one more year. And Are there any other changes that you want to make with the city, or is there a term limit that you can run for mayor? Because I know the mayor down here in Orlando. I mean, he's been mayor, I think, 10 terms or something like that. Seemed like he's been mayor since I
Yeah.
was in high school.
There's a lot of mayors for life. Part of my belief in leadership is that good leaders make good leaders.
Hmm.
And so I've said from the beginning of my first term, I don't want to be mayor forever.
Okay.
That I think that would make me a bad leader.
Yeah.
Um, so I do. We have a development site that's going up that's going to be $1 billion, and I think it changes the face of our county and our town.
Wow. Wow.
And so we are in the first steps of that. And so this last year we'll start working with the developer. Um, and I told people I'm willing to give you maybe one more term, and that's it. I want to see that project come to fruition. But we have qualified people. I have a vice mayor; she's amazing. We have qualified people who've gone and gotten training, who've watched previous leadership, who have their own leadership styles, who are more than capable of leading the town. Now, nobody can be me, right? Nobody
Right.
can be somebody else, but everybody that's on council, I can truly say wants what's best for the town. And we might have some folks who are like just power hungry, want to have the spot, but they would still do what's best for the town. Um, so I don't have any plans of doing more than one more term.
Okay.
I have looked at, we've had some shakeups here lately. I am looking at running for county council for sure.
Oh, well,
Mhm.
it's that is wonderful news to hear. Well, Mayor Casey, the prayer is nothing but success, continued success for you.
Thank
As I
you.
know you will continue to accomplish great things. I really want to thank you again. I am honored that you took the time out of your busy schedule of running the city to sit down with me on Conversations with Ronnie Keith and have this conversations. I thank you so much. Um, very, very proud of you, very happy for you, and I know you will continue to do big and amazing things.
Appreciate you. Thank you for having me on here. And I want everybody to know that he woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning to do this with me. I appreciate it.
No
'Cause
problem
I
at
had
all.
a planned out day already. So I really appreciate you.
Shit. Listen, every day is planned out for you. I couldn't imagine, running a town, but you do it great, and a $1 billion development. My goodness, listen, we thank you so much, and whatever's new that happens in your career, we definitely want to be there with you and have you back on the show.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mayor Casey. This has been Conversations with Ronnie Keith.